Hello and welcome to the Brand New You Show, the podcast dedicated to helping you boost your career credibility. I'm your host, Ryan Roten, and today's guest is Sean Scoffield. Sean and I met via LinkedIn, where we exchanged a few messaging chats and a couple of files back and forth when I realized that he has a very unique take on the power of personal assessments, which is something that I'm asked about quite a bit. Specifically, I get questions like, what's the point of taking StrengthFinder? Or why do I recommend taking more than one assessment when StrengthFinder may or may not be enough? And so when I saw how Sean was actually putting together the results of his assessments, I knew that I had to share what he was doing with you. So with that, Sean, welcome to the Brand New You Show.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here with you this morning.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you on the show today, especially now that I've actually hit the record button, which is not something I would normally tell people, but we went through this whole thing and I forgot, but now we're good to go. And I'm very excited to share with the audience today, the methodology that you use when you put together these StrengthFinder assessments, and more importantly, like what you do with them and how you use them and leverage them in your career, because that's where most people struggle. I mean, it's one thing for StrengthFinder to give you your top 5 strengths. It's a completely different thing to try to figure out how to utilize them best. And I think what you put together here is really pretty cool, and it'll be very helpful for a lot of people. However, as someone who listens to the show, you know the very first question I'm going to ask before we can get into your assessments, which is, if you could vacation in only one place, where would you go?
Well, I live in Australia. Normally, I would say Australia for its diversity, but challenging myself to not pick a place where I live, I'd have to say New Zealand. And I think it'll be a challenge for you to find the music for it. But it's an incredible country with such great diversity and encapsulated in 2 small islands. So it's a wonderful place.
Yeah, I've never been there. Never been to Australia either, but everybody that I talk to when they talk about New Zealand it just seems like such a fantastic place. And besides, that's where all the Lord of the Rings stuff is at too. So.
Yeah, that's right. I have a strong connection with it. I worked for a New Zealand wine family for 8 years. I got engaged in New Zealand in Akaroa with my wife. It's a magical place. If you can go, it has so many wonderful places: mountains, beaches, coves, fishing, adventure, skiing. It's incredible.
It's on my list. All I can say is on my list. Someday I will make it there.
I reckon you got a pretty long list going now.
I do actually now, after all the different guests I've had. I have a very long list. I'm gonna have to save a lot of money for travel and retirement. But anyway, hey, let's get into your career path, because you're not somebody who's like you just woke up one day and said, you know what, assessments is my thing. I'm going to start looking at all these different assessments. I mean, you were just like everybody else, going through your career, taking twists and turns and stuff. And then one day you took an assessment and you started to realize the power of it. So I'm curious, how did that journey happen for you? Like, how did you get introduced to assessments? And then, more importantly, when did you realize that you could use them to better your career?
Yeah, I think I've always been open to people's guidance and feedback. I moved out of home pretty young age. I was about 15, just turning 16, and had to get a job. And I found myself in the hospitality industry. And in terms of meeting people in different cultures and backgrounds and getting different takes on life, it's a fantastic mixing pot. And I worked my way through hospitality over 15, 20 years and did quite well. But it was when I was only about 30 years old, actually, so a little while ago, I discovered StrengthFinder, which was introduced to me by my wife and my sister-in-law, her sister, who were both working at Red Bull. And you have to remember, this is Australia about 15 odd years ago. Self-assessments and personal self-assessments, StrengthFinder was a very forward-thinking type of thing to be doing down here in Australia. And it was something that I got a tremendous lot of value out of.
And you found that it gave you wings, huh? That's bad joke.
It's all right. Actually, that's their line. And I think the benefit why they introduced it for their staff is Red Bull is very passionate about expressing your true self and really empowering you and giving you permission to be yourself at work. as long as you're doing your best work. So as you and I know, when you are more like yourself and you can feel like you're accepted, then you're willing to put that extra effort in.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
did the strengths assessment for myself because it was one of interest. I wanted to see what I was made up of. And I gotta say, for the next 15 years, I used it in every position I had. And I didn't just use it. I didn't do the assessment and get the top 5 and print it out and put it on my bookshelf and forget about it forever. I actually lived and breathed it. I structured it in a really cool, interesting way. So for those listening and watching, my top 5 strengths are positivity, number 1, and then achiever, maximizer, and then individualization and connectedness. What I've found with the StrengthFinder in this particular makeup is, and we can talk a little bit more about this, but with this StrengthFinder assessment, I thought, what if you coupled the strengths? And what if you coupled them in a certain way that made it really easy for you to remember, and also to apply. So what I did was I took my number 1, which was positivity. Yeah, and I used that as my overarching compass or my methodology. So no matter what I did, no matter the situation, no matter who I engaged with, I used that as being my guiding light. So whatever I was going to do, I was going to be positive about it. And some people thought it was blind optimism. It's not. It's a totally different take. It's about actually approaching every situation, conversation, opportunity with a positive view rather than a negative one. The next thing I did was I looked at the remaining 4 strengths and I wanted to see what the commonalities were, but also what the differences were. With Achiever Maximizer, I thought, this is perfect. I was just starting into sales at this time, working for the wine company that I was. And I thought, if you're going to go after sales and if you're going to ask people for business, you might as well ask them for the most that you can in that single call. Save you going back around. Maybe it's lazy. I call it maximizer. But sure. But that's how I got my mindset around those two coupled. The achiever maximizer combination. It's actually pretty strong. If you're going to ask for the business, ask for the world. And then I looked at individualization and connectedness, where together they're pretty powerful, but separate, powerful in their own right. Individualization is being able to identify the unique qualities of individuals or certain situations, businesses who I was consulting with at the time. And then I looked at the connectedness of how we could all work together. And this really helped me moving forward when I came to managing teams.
Well, I mean, you clearly know more about your top 5 strengths than what the vast majority of people who take the StrengthFinder assessment do. And if anybody's curious, my 5 are strategic, relator, futuristic, ideation, and intellection, which basically means I like to think about things a lot and project those things out into the future in a strategic way. And then my relator skill says that I like to work with people to achieve those types of goals. So if I really kind of look at it, this podcast is a perfect example of how I do that, because I'm trying to be strategic in helping others. I work towards that goal in the future through the thinking and stuff that I do with my guests like yourself, to help share what I'm learning with others. And that's why, when you and I talked the first time, I could actually tell you were full of positivity. But I knew I needed to talk to you because you know this stuff inside and out. And so I'm curious, when you look at your top strengths and you approach stuff positive, using positivity, how have you seen your strengths? Let's just stick with StrengthFinder stuff right now. How have you seen that help you in certain situations in your career?
Yeah, I gotta say that positivity strength in itself has allowed me to, it's not something that suddenly I did the assessment I suddenly already had. It's something I've always had. It was just identified when I did the assessment. And I think that's a big thing. It will be an anchor and underarching common thing that you'll probably no doubt hear across this podcast is that these are things that are already inherent with you. You would have applied these strengths in different parts of your life without you even being consciously aware of it. It's only when you do the assessments you can start bringing greater context to it and think about the situation. So for me, I mentioned I moved out of home when I was a young age. I've got to experience so much life, so much life. I've had some unique positions and opportunities. I've taken risks. Some have worked out, some haven't. But I would not have been able to have the comfort or confidence around that if I didn't have a positive outlook, a positive mindset to do so. So I think from a personal element, it's allowed me to really live a life, with fun and enjoyment in mind. From a career standpoint, the positivity has really helped because I've worked in some very competitive markets and some challenging times. And I got to say, no matter the industry, no matter the market conditions, the positivity helps me win above the rest. And that might be Achiever Maximizer in there as well. I would say it is. In the way that I develop teams, which I have been doing for about 10 years now, I've been using the individualization and connectedness power as to combine those two. So I think, the top 5 strengths is who you are, whether you accept it or not, it's there. But if you can really harness it and think about how you structure it together, then it can be really powerful. I loved it when I saw your top 5 strengths, and I thought about, I can't help myself when it comes to StrengthFinder, by the way. I put all my team through it, and anyone I meet, I didn't have a look. And when I found out yours, I looked at your underarching. I was wondering how you could map it out. And you explained it perfectly. That's exactly how I saw it.
Yeah, it's, and it's one of those things too. Like you can't be like jealous of somebody else's strengths, for example, like when it was funny because I went to, we did StrengthFinder at one of the companies I used to work for. And when people got the results back, they were comparing results and they were like, oh, I want that strength or I want that strength. And, and that's just, obviously that's not the way it works. But it's, all of us are unique and individual, and just, like I have positivity in my strengths somewhere. They're they're in the list somewhere. I just don't know where, because I actually haven't taken the big assessment to give me all 36, but it's just not in the top 5. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean, honestly, that I would want to switch out positivity for my top strength, strategic, because that's who I am. And that's what I think that's the biggest thing people have to remember when they take these assessments is it's who you are. And it's not a reflection of, like who you want to become, if that makes sense. Like, I'd love to be positive in every situation. Right. But that talent for me may be a little bit lower, and I may have to work at it more than other people.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I did pay the extra couple bucks to get the full assessment results. And I got to say, it's the worst thing you can do because your eye goes straight to the bottom of the page and you look at the last 3 or 4 and I go, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm not that? And you start trying to think of situations like that. And you actually have to think a little bit harder because it's not inherent in you. But the one thing that StrengthFinder will tell you is that you have all the strengths. Everybody does. And it's not like you don't have them. It's just that 5 are more powerful than the others. In fact, they say the ones in your top 10, they tend to swap around a little bit. Usually your 1 and 2 and 3 pretty much stay the same. But the 4 and the 5, they might become 7s and 8s or 6s.
Yeah, and it depends on your place in life. I've had that happen before. I've taken a StrengthFinder 3 or 4 times, and they do switch around for me. But I always have strategic and futuristic in the top 3, regardless of how many times I take it. It's just sometimes they may switch positions, but they're always in the top 3.
Yeah, absolutely. When I've done the same thing, I've taken about 3 or 4 times, and just every 3 or 4 years, I'll do it just to see. But mine will be generally in the top 5 or just on the outside. But what was really interesting was to look at the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10s, and because if you only do the top 5, you could be underutilizing some of the strengths that are just on the fringe. So when I did the top 5, I had to look at the other ones and saw what are some of the situations that I could, just naturally bring them in. Just awareness is key sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, and I agree, awareness is key because my last boss in the corporate job, when he took the StrengthFinder, his bottom strength was empathy. Right.
How long did you work with him?
Right. So, but what was funny is he tried, one of his higher strengths was positivity. And so once he saw that, he started to realize, oh, you know what? There are times where I just ask people, just give me information. Right. And I don't think about how it makes him feel when I ask them in a certain way. And so I literally saw him change, if you will.
Yeah.
Once he knew that it was like a bottom strength, he knew he needed to work on it. And he made a very conscious effort, not to bring it up, for example, from where it was to number one, but he knew he needed to make a conscious effort to make sure he was empathizing with his team or with other people, because there are people whose empathy is way high. And if they're working with him and it's way low, you're gonna crash. You're gonna have a collision in the middle that will make your your conversations or your work or your project or whatever not as constructive as it could be. And once he realized that, he started to actually pay attention to it and pay attention to himself, which I think is what the whole point of taking the assessments does for you. Is it just makes you more self-aware, not just of yourself, but of other people.
Absolutely. And every strength has balcony and basements, light and shade, positive, negatives associated with it. But it's wonderful. It sounds like the situation there with the boss realizing empathy is at the end, but positivity, number one. You probably did mind shift. Well, if I just, the best way to get the result here in the most positive way that I can approach it to get the best result is to show a little bit more empathy, even if I don't mean it, or if it's not natural to me. It's not trying to be sinister, but it's going, this is actually going to get the most positive result here, so I have to do it. It suddenly becomes an obligation, for themselves. Yeah,
well, and he was tight enough with us as a team that he kind of made it a running joke, if you will, right? Not, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it. He literally was trying to make it obvious that, hey, I know I'm not good at this, but I also know you need it, so I'm going to pat you on the back today, but get your work done.
And then I bet you it's a little bit awkward at first too. It's like, okay, all right, that was good.
Yeah, it was funny. But like I said, he did took it to heart and used it. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle is, once I know empathy's at the bottom, what do I do? Does that just mean that I'm just not a fun person, or I can't, and really what you do with these things is kind of up to you. And that's where I want to kind of start to get into how you've taken these and you're using them in your life and with your teams. But before I get there, I want to mention one thing. You've taken a lot of different assessments. So when I look at your chart, and this is where the podcast part will be a little bit difficult. And for those of you who are listening, I will put this podcast visually up on YouTube, so you can go take a look and listen to what we're talking about as soon as I start to show the presentation that Sean put together. But you've taken a lot of assessments and you've put them all together. And so I'm just going to name off a few of them. You've taken the VIA strengths, obviously the StrengthFinder 2.0. There's probably some I won't even know about that you took, but the fascination advantage is on here. The standout advantage or standout assessment is on here. And then and I forget the name, I apologize, but I took it because you suggested it. It's Jen
Cudmore.
Yeah, Jen Cudmore.
Yeah.
She has an assessment that you took as well. And you've taken all of these and put them together in a really succinct manner. And like I said, I'm going to share that here in a minute. But my question to ask before I get there is, out of all the ones that you've taken, which one was your favorite one?
Okay. It's almost impossible for me to answer that one because see, you're asking someone who has positivity, individualization here to choose his favorite one.
Okay. Well, let me ask it again. Let me ask it a different way. Which one gave you the most insight into you? Made you go, oh, that's why I do this, or that's something I hadn't thought about. Which one really made you go, huh?
Yeah. Okay. I'll narrow it down to two. That's the best you're going to get out of me. StrengthFinder 2.0 was the first. It was the one that I did, all those years ago. And it's something that I've used as a guiding light, anchor, compass for all that time. And it's something that I've been able to easily apply to all my teams. And I've seen the advantages for them to apply as well. So I get greater satisfaction out of that. So I'd say, being the first, still regarded as one of the best, that one definitely. The Jen Cudmore one that is the entrepreneurial brand assessment. That's the one that I found very interesting of late because it takes another element where it doesn't just talk about who you are, but there's an element about a very strong element about who you are likely to attract and how you can talk with them and communicate with them. StrengthsFinder does, leadership does that in terms of people that you work with and how you can work with others. But Jane Cudmore's assessment actually looks at the people that you attract. Now, you talked a little bit about, comparing strengths and, being a little bit dissatisfied if you're not getting this and that.
Right.
I found the same situation with myself when I did Jane Cudmore's, when I looked at the people I'm likely to attract and thought, oh, okay, if I was to ever start my own business, are these the people that I would normally have thought about attracting? And in some cases it wasn't. But so that challenged me in my way of thinking. And we'll get to that a little bit more later on.
So with that, Sean, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. I know your very first slide is of you, and it talks about how you are helping others gain greater confidence and focus towards achieving their goals.
Yeah. And Ron, I got to send a shout out to you first and foremost, because it was only when I came across your podcast, I actually learned about these other assessments. And if I could just backtrack a little bit, I've been using StrengthsFinder 2.0 for many years that I have. I did find that it had started to become somewhat one-dimensional. I was thinking of it only in one way. So when I learned about these other assessments, and I swear learner's got to be in my top 10, I'm sure it is. But I wanted to do the challenge because what I was feeling is that there was areas in my life that I wanted to get more fulfillment out of. And I thought when I learned about some of these character strengths, fascination, standout, I thought I wanted to see how they all related with each other, what the commonalities were, what the differences were, but more importantly, how I could apply them individually into different parts of my life. Okay. And when I did that, and I was thinking about, what is the true value proposition of myself? And, I was thinking a lot about personal brand and professional brand, and that's where I came across you. I wanted to know what my value statement was. What was my value proposition? What was my personal brand statement? And it was only until after I completed all these assessments and looked at the tapestry of who I am that I was able to very quickly and confidently come up with this. So really what I've always done and what I hope to continue to always do is really to help others gain greater confidence and focus towards achieving their goals or the things they want. It's really about just accepting yourself, giving yourself permission and confidence to go for it. And let's put some simple strategies around it. So that's what I've always done. But let's go to the first slide, and I'll talk through what the two assessments are on here. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to look at was my leadership value traits, but leadership starts with the person, with the leader themselves. And I think if you're going to be a strong leader in your environment, you really, really need to understand yourself, your personality, and your character. So when I came across your podcast, I learned about the VIA strengths. And this was about the character strengths. And I hadn't heard about this one. The StrengthsFinder 2.0 is definitely talking about personalities. It's what I deliver always. But the character strength was explained to me about, it's just who I am always. What are my moral and mental qualities and beliefs? So I would say that in the bottom of the slide, for those that are listening, it does say that VIA characters is how I do things, and the Gallup strengths is what I do. I've recently rethought this. I actually think the VIA characters is more of who I am, and the StrengthsFinder 2.0 is how I do it. So there's a slight change on the slide that I'll have to update.
Yeah. That makes sense when you say it that way. How it works. Yeah. And also I just recently learned about the VIA strengths as well. I picked that up from Susan Critton, who was also a guest on the podcast. And I didn't know about it either. So
yeah, she's fantastic too. I really got a lot out of that. And this was the first assessment I did out of listening to your podcast. So this got the ball rolling, and I think I can understand why. When I thought about the two assessments and how they marry together, personality and character are very similar. So I wanted to see where the commonalities or differences or similarities were on these ones. And when I went through the VIA strengths, the number 1 was hope, number 2 is humor, number 3 is honesty, 4 is curiosity, and 5 is social intelligence. Now, when you remember positivity is my number 1 in StrengthsFinder 2.0, you can absolutely see how that hope and humor would absolutely be there.
Yep.
The achiever maximizer, you know, that kind of combination can really, I've used honesty a whole lot in my life about just giving that honest feedback. It's for the greater good. I do it in positive light, but let's do it so that we can achieve more. And the curiosity and social intelligence, that really does mirror the individualization and connectedness, where I'm actually really genuinely concerned about people, their motivators, their drivers, and how we can all work together with the social intelligence on how I can apply those.
Mm-hmm.
So that those two, I thought the character and personality together really does create this own greatness about who, as the type of leader, you are. Now, this is how I am. But what I would recommend, and I'm not actually sure where I got these two circles from, but I know I got it from somewhere. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I understand that the VI strengths and the StrengthFinder together really does create this special area where a lot of people can put these two assessments together to determine or become more aware of what type of natural leader they're likely to be and run with that.
Yeah, and just for those listening in, if when you get to the YouTube video, you'll see it, but the slide has basically two circles, not basically, it has two circles on it. And obviously there's some overlap, like a Venn diagram, but it minus the third circle. And it's, and we've got the VA strengths on one side and the top strengths from your StrengthFinder assessment on the other. And when you put the two side to side or side by side, it's very easy to see how they relate to each other. Which is what I like about this, because it's so simple that it's easy to understand it. I mean, you know, as you were talking earlier, I was looking at this slide and we were talking about positivity, and I was looking at your top talents from the VA going, oh, there's hope, there's humor, honest, it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really love these two assessments. Complete them, put them together, look for the similarities and how they apply with each other. Understand you have both. And I would say the characters are more what you apply in your quiet moments, in your family time, in your work environment, absolutely. But it's about essentially who you are. When you're driving the car and there's no one around, that's you. The things you think about, the way you treat other drivers on the road, this is going to be a true demonstration of character on that side.
I'm glad there's not a driving assessment out there other than.
That's right. Actually, I'm going to do that. I'll find it. And then the StrengthFinder is about how you apply who you are. So.
I like it.
Right.
I like it. This is, I mean, just this slide by itself is really powerful.
Yeah.
Putting your character strengths next to your personality strengths is really, I think, a powerful way for you to go, okay, I can start to see what's important to me, not just as far as who I am, but also then how I can use these things in my day-to-day world so that I don't, I mean, this will sound weird when I say it, but I don't violate who I am personally.
Well, that's right. And it's your authentic true self. And that, you know, people have a pretty good BS detector nowadays in corporates and family. And I think as a population community, we become very in tune with who's authentic and who's not. In the career world, you really got to be true to yourself. Some of the best leaders aren't always the nicest people, you know, but they're authentic and they're true, and people understand and very clear about what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think you can be whatever leader you want, but just be aware of what's authentic to you and be that one. It's so much easier for everyone and yourself.
Yep. 100% agree. 100% agree. I think this is a pretty powerful slide by itself. So I'm going to move on to the next one, and there's only 6 slides, so we'll go through these fairly quickly. But I want to make sure that everybody understands this is how you use. If you've ever wondered, I took an assessment, now what do I do with it? This is what you do with it. This is how you know how to use it.
Yeah, and you know, I'll say from the beginning, and I'll say it again at the end. I'm willing to help anyone who is prepared to put the time and effort into doing these assessments. If they want to show me the results, I'm happy to put some time aside and work with you to really map it out. It's one thing I'm really good at is seeing the commonalities and bringing them together. And sometimes it takes an objective view to really understand your true strength, and which is an awesome segue to this slide, by the way, because I took your challenge where I was listening to another one of your episodes and I'm going through a personal brand building story here.
Sure.
This is actually a product of what came out of me listening to your podcast, Ryan. So in case some listeners don't understand, I'm going on my own journey. So if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably going along a journey as well.
Yep.
Apply the things. Don't just listen. Don't be a passive listener. Actually think about how you can quickly apply these things. And for this next slide, I know a lot of people will shirk and irk about this, but there was a challenge you did of asking people about that you come in contact with, how they describe you. And
Yep.
this gives an objective view. I didn't think about it for too long because I knew if I did, I wouldn't do it. So for 1 week only, I just thought about 8 different people in my life and from varying different backgrounds. I had to respect them because otherwise I won't take their feedback as being serious. But I just wanted to really put out there. And I sent an email or a text, actually it was a text to all of them saying, hi, Sean here. We met last week, or they know who I am. I'm doing a personal brand building exercise. I mean, you can really help me. If you wouldn't mind, how would you describe me in 3 words, adjectives in brackets? And as soon as I hit send, my heart's pounding, sweat's beating. First of all, do I even want to hear what people think of me? Second of all, what if they, will they want to respond? Am I imposing? Am I infringing on our friendship, relationship, whatever it is by even asking? But I got to say, every single one of them responded within 24 hours. And I was blown away by that. It was nice feeling. Some of them within 5 minutes, it was like bang. And I really like those ones because what they gave you was instinctively true.
Right.
But so there was one, I saw one presenter out of California who's out here in Australia. And I got to spend probably in total about an hour with him, 20 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes here. But over that 3 or 4 days, I got to spend about an hour with him. And I thought he'd be a great one. This guy is a billionaire. He's a leader in his game. And it'd just be interesting to see if someone in that realm, what they thought of me over that.
Right.
Another one was a respected author that I've got to know, who I have arm's length business social connections with. Another one was a CEO of a business partner of my company. Another one was an international coach, consultant, trainer, so who identifies the strengths and limitations of others. I thought he'll give me some truth. Another one was a peer, a colleague. Another one was a direct report, so somebody reporting into me. And then there's just 2 fun ones down here. There's a very funny.
The one from your mom's my favorite.
Yeah. I think she's the only one that lied. So for those that are listening, the global speaker, he said energetic, warm, and optimistic. The author, authentic, supportive, collaborative. The CEO was personable, authentic, helpful. The international coach, consultant trainer was authentic, collaborative, and confident. My colleague was positive, authentic, and kind. And then my direct report was inspiring, sharing, supportive. Australia's funniest comedian, I'll say Peter Hellier. He said I was a very funny guy, and my mom said I'm a good boy.
He's a good
boy. What I thought was really interesting, Ryan, when you get this feedback, you're going to be thinking a lot of things. That are like, is this me?
Yeah.
Like, I never thought I would describe myself in this way. And the ones that stuck out for me a lot were authentic was used quite a few times. It's not that I see myself as disingenuine or deceitful by any means, but authentic was a really interesting one. And when we talk about, there's the VIA characters. Remember, my number 3 was honesty.
Right.
And if you think about that, it does overlap. So when you get feedback from others, don't get caught up on the words. Think about the meanings and how they can relate to your other strengths that have already come across in terms of your personality and character strength.
Right. I mean, you selected eight random people. Yeah. And what's amazing about this slide to me is how they almost all use the same words.
Yeah.
Right.
It did blow me away.
And I know exactly what you're saying. So in my book, Career Cred, that's one of the exercises I recommend people do is send a note to your trusted advisors and ask them to describe you. because I mean, that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, right? If you're getting something on your strengths finders and all that stuff that's contrary to what you're hearing people say, then what's probably happening is you're acting differently for some reason in front of those people that's not aligned with who you truly are.
Yeah.
And it can be a real eye opener for folks. But it can in that way, but it can also be an eye opener for folks in that, you know, the comments you get back, you'd be surprised by. I know I was when I got mine. I had one peer actually who told me, he gave me my 3 words and then he put behind it, I'd work for you in any job in any company, anytime.
Wow.
And I was just like, okay, wow, I didn't expect that. I was not, you know, that is just something I wasn't expecting. And it can be a really good positive thing for you to do an exercise like this, just to reinforce who you are. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And don't wait for you to be at your top of the game before you ask people. I think actually what you're suggesting is do it now. You know, do it when you're authentically you yourself, to really find out. And if when you get the feedback, it's actually a really good pick me up. It's a little bit of an ego booster as well. So it will help create the motivation you need to continue along the path. Do it, guys. The Achiever Maximizer is telling you that don't think about it too much. Just do it. And it's
I love how it reinforces too what 2 assessments have told you already.
Yeah, and just for those listening, I just want to reiterate the ones that authentic came up quite a few times, but so did collaborative, helpful, kind, and sharing. So they're all kind of the same thing as well. So I thought that was really interesting. That's why I say ask quite a few people that you respect in different parts of your life, because hopefully what you'll see is a common thread across all of them. That's going to help you shape your brand.
Yep, absolutely. So let's move on to the next slide here, which is your you've labeled personal work ethic traits, and you have shown a slide that comes with your Fascination Advantage assessment. So let's talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so the Fascination Advantage assessment, I thought it was a pretty good program. There's some really good worksheets and thought starters along with it. It was pretty interesting that it came out this way, the Victor, where you have 2 Fascination Advantages overlapping, which is prestige and power. There's no way to really describe this program or assessment other than to do it or invest into it. If you're curious about how you approach your own work. When I thought about how this came out for me, the Victor, prestige, and power, this is actually how I am, not as a leader, not as in my quiet time, not as a family person. This is me at work. This is the thing that really stood out for me. And that's where it got me thinking about, hold on, what are all these assessments in different parts of my life? That's why I labeled it personal work ethic, because I think this one speaks to me and my direct influence in what I do personally for the results for myself. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense to me. And even if I go back and I look at your strengths, like the prestige part, achiever, maximizer.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so prestige is one of those ones where you're looking, you know, you're looking to achieve things so that you're recognized for the work that you're doing. And I found it, I've always looked at it as how Sally Hogshead is the person who invented this assessment. I've always looked at it as how the world sees you. I hadn't actually tied it to work, however, until you just now said it. And as I read mine, I'm the maverick leader. And I also have power as my secondary advantage, but my first one's innovation. And when I read that slide again, I read the traits that come along with that again, and I look at it from a work standpoint, it's absolutely 100% me.
Yeah.
I can't deny it at all, even if I wanted to.
Yeah. When I looked at, so I stopped for the listeners and viewers, I stalked Ryan's all the strengths, because along the podcast, he usually tells what his own assessment results were. So everything I did for myself here, I did one for Ryan and sent it to him as well. But when I thought about the fascination strengths and the personal work ethic, it was crystal clear to me. It was like, this is absolutely what you're doing every week. This is how you're applying it. So, yeah. And when you told about, leading teams and and discovery and so forth. That's absolutely, and I could see it clear as day.
Yeah, it's I look at this differently now because of what you just said. But I really liked what I liked about the Fascination Advantage assessment was it was different than all the other ones.
Yeah.
In that it explained things about you in different ways, in ways that I think at least initially resonated with me more and made more sense to me. And then as you start to tie it all together, everything starts to come together for you. But this is the one that really made me go, okay, wait a minute. Now I start to really see how these things apply.
Yeah, when you go through Sally's program and the different slides and all the little, I say the thought starters, those little chapters, they're paragraphs or phrases here and there. They're just really interesting. I like to read, but I'm not a huge reader. I like quick bits of information quickly. And that's what I really liked about Sally's is here's the results. And even though there's a lot of detail on this slide, and this is directly from the assessment, there's a lot of little quick bits that if you read them quickly, you go, oh yeah, great. I can see it and build momentum as well.
Right. Yeah, I highly recommend Fascination Advantage assessment. I'll put a link to some of these assessments in the show notes so people can get access to them both on YouTube and as well as here. Because I like this one too. This one's a little expensive. I think it's $50 to take.
50 US. Yeah, it was. Look, I'd still recommend
it's worth it. I personally think it's worth it, but if it's a little expensive, I can see why people wouldn't want to take this one. But it's really good. What you get out of it is just a different view of yourself than what some of the other assessments will give you.
Yeah, remember, I'm trying to create a tapestry of who I am as a whole.
Yeah.
And I said, if when we talked about this assessment, this personal work ethic, if you feel that you're totally 100% comfortable with it and you've got it nailed, and you can't afford it right now, maybe it's not the right time for you. I'd still recommend doing it though. Even though I feel like through StrengthFinder I was able to organize my own strength, seeing it this way allowed me to walk into a meeting with more confidence, engage with my peers and in my direct reports with more confidence as well, because I understood how people see me in the workplace because of what I do. So that's the biggest benefit of this one in how I applied it anyway.
Yeah, I like that one. Let's move on to another ones that I like. My favorite one. I won't say my favorites because, like you, if I were to ask which one's my favorite, I don't think I could answer that question either. So it wasn't really fair of me to ask you when I don't think I can answer it myself. But the standout assessment. This is one that actually on my website I'm starting to get like a lot of traffic to the standout assessment. I'm not sure what's driving that. But this one was invented by a guy named Marcus Buckingham. And he actually used to work for Gallup, which does the StrengthFinder assessment. So the administration of the standout assessment is exactly the same as the administration as the StrengthFinder, meaning you can do it online or you do it in a book and you get the little code that you need. But it's basically the same thing, but it looks at things differently. So for example, if I remember right, there's 36 strengths in StrengthFinder. In standout, he condensed all of those down to, I think it's 9. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 8 or 9.
Okay, yeah. So it makes it a little bit easier to digest. Plus, you get to see where you rank in all, we'll just say 9 of them on your results. You don't have to pay extra to get the additional ones, which I thought was interesting. So let's go ahead and you've got this slide tagged as an additional leadership value traits.
Yeah. So when we looked at the original leadership value traits slide, that's talk about my personality, my character, but essentially who I am as a person that will set the governance of what type of leader I'm likely to be. But this one is actually the value that I bring to the team because of who I am, what manifests from me applying my personality and character, what are the benefits. An advisor stimulator came out. So, which really, I can understand why people are looking at Marcus's assessment with interest. Anyone who's done StrengthFinder will probably do this because, hold on, someone did StrengthFinder, now they developed their own. Is it newer, better, interesting, different insight?
It could very well be, yeah.
It could be. That's why I did it. It doesn't discount anything StrengthFinder does, but you're right, it does look at things differently. And when I think about the value that I bring to the team or the value that I deliver for myself in terms of advisor stimulator, this one kind of speaks to my shadow values, the things I don't often admit to others is like, I like to advise people. I like to tell people, this is how you do it. And the stimulators, come on, let's go do it now. I've shown you how. Let's go ahead and do it. So I'm smiling at this one because I know it's true. It's there's no hiding from it. I do like to give advice. I do like to point people in the right direction and help them succeed. So if you look at my top 5 in character or personality, they're mirror of this. This is the results of that.
Yeah. You and I share advisor. So I'm also an advisor 1, but my 2 is creator, which, if you could take that back to my StrengthsFinder, I've got intellection and ideation in there. So and futuristic. So it's, thinking things and figuring out how to make things better. So they're just highly correlated. It just, that's why I recommend taking more than one assessment, because sometimes you can take an assessment, get a result and go, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You take another assessment and it tells you the same thing or something extremely similar. You kind of have to start going, okay, maybe, and if you take a third one and it all tells you the same thing and you're still going, I don't know, then you're just fooling yourself.
Yeah, I that's right. You start thinking, I got to vary up my answers here. They're on to me.
Right, exactly. And I'll tell you what, if you really read these, and you're honest with yourself, there are times where you will read something in here and you'll be like, holy cow, they have a camera in my house. They have to have a camera in my house, because they're just so close to hitting home.
Absolutely. And, each of these assessments, they haven't been put into this organization of different parts of my life, but remember why I did this. And what I did was, when I looked at the assessments and the answers that they gave, I thought, which part of my life does this best represent? And what I'm really interested in, and why I put the offer out there to work with others, is I want to see if it translates across other individuals as well in these particular areas of their lives. So I think there's something in that, and it's certainly been helping me a lot of late.
Yeah. And if you if you want to have some real fun, show it to your spouse or significant other after you take the assessment and watch them go, oh my gosh, that's totally you.
Yeah. My wife, I love her. She's amazing. And, but I do drive her insane, positively. But also doing all these assessments, I make her do them as well.
Yeah.
She's got her own business, and I even get her staff to do them. My own staff, I've gotten to do them as well. It's infectious. But when you start sharing the results, they go, oh yeah. And then you see them go, I wish I had that, or I wanted this one.
Right.
Don't do that. Stop there.
Right.
Celebrate.
All right, last one here. Last slide is personal brand traits. This is the Jen Cudmore assessment. I just Googled her. It's Jen Cudmore, CUDMORE.com.au.
And it's free to do. And I pointed Ryan into this one. I will talk to Jen, because it doesn't give you all the results up front and really what's the benefits behind that. I think there's an opportunity for Jen to work closely with people who have completed the assessment to give the full benefit. But this one I thought was really interesting. I started at the top of this talking about, this was the one of late that I found the most interesting, because it talks about who you are, but the people that you're likely to attract, the reasons why, and how you can talk to them. So when I was thinking about myself as a personal brand, professional brand, what's my value proposition? If I were to commoditize myself or treat myself as a product, this is marketing. Right? This is understanding who the people you're talking to, who are the people that are going to want you as a product, and how will you communicate with them. So they, like some of the other assessments, it gives you 2 outcomes and how they blend together. So one of the outcomes is your stronger one. It talks about the signature of who you are. And the second one is how you influence, and that's how I am. And I think that might have subconsciously, I've only just realized it shaped how I thought about personality and character assessments, the who and how, but very similar. I like this one because it mirrors the character and the personality assessments. It's got a little bit more of a holistic spiritual vibe. Jen is a fantastic, wonderful being. She's very intuitive, I would say. So if you like people who are intuitive and really want to help you align your spiritual and purpose, she's your person. So when she uses the words like alchemist or innocence, that's what she's talking about. The alchemist is someone who will help people make dreams come true. So their service promise is about transformation. So it's about change or achievement or maximizing. See the shift here in the positive light. The innocence talks about honesty and making us new again. Service promises about happiness. So you think about positivity, individualization, connectedness, see hope and humor, see how it's all kind of interwoven.
Right. Yep.
Now, with each of those, they'll actually talk about which of those strengths people are likely to attract. So when I started looking at the alchemists, people that are going to be attracted to the alchemists they're looking for instant change or transformation to quickly, a combination of magic and practical, so practical magic, some real outcomes, and highlights what the possibility could be and really how we can get there. So for someone who's thinking about how am I going to communicate to people like that, if you think about brand colors, title, service program, or digital program, you want to have it talking about life transformation, changes in areas of their life, love anything new, amazing, and mystical, want to realize their dreams and create a clear vision. If you think about what I've done in my career in terms of managing sales teams and individual performance for progression, that's exactly what I'll be doing. It's about creating, here's the end result, here's the goal. What are the steps we need to do to get there? And let's do that quickly. So I like that. But what I really liked about this is it allowed me to lift my eyes. It doesn't have to just be in my sales career. I could actually, suddenly I was thinking, coaching in all facets of life or different facets of life, but that never really occurred to me before. So that was an interesting one.
Yeah.
Now, when we look at innocence, it's how I am, make us new again, service, promise, happiness. The people that are going to be attracted to that one, they're looking for a desire to escape, but it needs to be simple and easy. Childlike wonder, sentimental happiness, refreshed, renewed, rejuvenated. So this is really, I'm thinking greens. I'm thinking growth. I'm thinking a childlike wonder. I'm thinking running through the grass. It's what I like about this is it really gives a lot of imagery in your mind about what your brand position look like. So when I think about my brand roadmap for this one, it's about providing hope. Thinking about my top 5 characteristics, hope, really simple, easy, fun. So the irony of this is thinking, hey, what if I help people, create their own tapestry of who they are by completing all these assessments? I'm forgetting that the people that I'm attracting, though, are looking for easy and fun, easy, really simple.
Right.
Getting some people to complete 5 different assessments is probably not the best way to go.
Well, I mean, it's not, you know what? Everything takes a little bit of work, though.
Yeah.
But I tell you what's fun about this is when you see it all put together, for me anyway, and I think you and I are very similar in this aspect. When you see it all put together, it just makes so much sense, and you get a rise out of it. You get more confident, I think, in your ability to lead, in your ability, it's your job or your work or whatever, and you just start to see your traits coming to life when you pay attention to it. And then you go, oh, this is a situation in which I know I'm going to shine, for example.
Absolutely. So in combination of all these assessments, it'll probably take you about 2.5 hours. I mean, if you do that over a week or 2 weeks, I mean, you get a real roll-on effect and you get all the answers all at once. And that's where it becomes a bit of a puzzle, a bit of fun. I'm happy to help you as well. So if you're struggling to see how it all comes together, I'm putting my hand out there because I love this stuff.
That's the kind of people you want to work with too. If you're going to do this, you want to work with somebody who absolutely loves this stuff. So
yeah, thanks. But it's also an indication of showing me your commitment too, because I don't want to just help people go, can you do it for me? It's like, no, this is part of the journey, man. Like this is the fun part. And the real benefit, I just want to inject this here so I don't forget. Doing these assessments wasn't about just building my personal brand. story. And it wasn't about thinking, if I was to start my own small business, what could it be? Although that's become a thought bubble now. What it The greatest confidence that it gave me, Ryan, was that doing all of these, you talked about it before, when you have all these assessments telling you the same thing over and over again, it's undeniable. And if anything, it's given me permission to accept myself, who I am, and therefore greater confidence about who I am. So if you're someone who's struggling with maybe confidence or identity crisis, or just, you know, not really come to terms with who you are as a person, do the assessments. And because, you know, the world sees you already. Wouldn't it be great to see exactly how they see you and try to find your true self?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that, because I think success, especially in corporations, depends on you knowing how other people see you. It's also, you know, you have to perform, you have to get your job done, you have to, you know, you have to do those things. Those are all, like, I think, basic entry requirements, right? But if you want to get promoted or you want to get moved into a different position, I think it's imperative that you know and understand what other people think about you, because if you don't know that, you'll never be able to change that perception if it needs to be changed.
Yeah. When you're asking for people to describe you in 3 words, so if you have any direct reports, definitely ask one of them. You know, someone that you respect, and a good performer as well, one of the top performers in your team, a peer, and your boss, and even your boss's boss. Because if ultimately that's where you want to go, you want to get a baseline of where they see you now. And then you can always do the follow-up question of, you know, I have aspirations, or I want to get to here. Don't be afraid to ask that question and put it out there. Understand I need to perform now. Understand I probably need to hit some milestones. But can you help me understand where are the areas that I need to improve or start working on now? It may not even be in areas of improvement. You just haven't had exposure or the opportunity. But what are the things I need to start working on now to get me ready? But when that opportunity does present itself, I'm the person who thought it.
Yeah. Perfect. We should do we should just do a podcast together from now on about how to analyze people's strengths, I think.
Oh, awesome.
Because my challenge right now is ending this, because I know I could talk to you about this forever. However, I know all good things must come to an end at some point. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll wrap things up. Sean, what are some of the best ways for people to reach out to you if they'd like to go through this exercise with you? You know, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm getting my my website set up. It'll be probably set up by the time this goes to air. So you can find me on theshanscofield.com. That's TheSeanScofield.com. And what you can do is, if you just subscribe to, it's a landing page. It's just my contact page, guys. You're not going to get a whole bunch of spam. But if you send me your email address, I'm happy to send you through this PDF version of my own personal roadmap, and I'll be able to communicate with you pretty clearly and work with you on any areas that you need. But if you're looking for anyone that can give you greater confidence and focus towards achieving your goals, and just need a sounding board, that's all I'm doing right now. I'm there.
Perfect. That's very generous of you too. And I recommend anybody who's listening that wants this or needs this. And I can tell you, and in the few years I've been doing this, the single most prominent question I get asked is, how do I define my brand? And while I give you examples of how to do that in my book, what Sean is doing, I think, is better than that. And if you really want to know how to define your brand, look him up. You will not be sorry. Any final words, tips, words of wisdom, final things you would like to share with anybody that's listening today?
Thank you, Ryan. I'm so glad I came across your podcast. A lot of what we've covered off today could not have been done if you weren't doing what you're doing. So I really appreciate your efforts. I know a lot of work goes into developing the podcast, and you're covering a lot of ground. And probably, someone who's been searching at this sort of information, I've gotten more out of your show in the last couple of months than I have in any other single forum. So thank you so much. And words of wisdom, and have fun, be kind to everyone. So that's it.
Perfect. Sean, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today. I know we went a little bit longer than what we said we would, but I personally think it was worth every minute. And thank you. I just want to say thanks again. And I look forward to continue working with you as we both move forward on our personal brand journeys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, guys.